Hi, everybody. So tonight I decided to um, skip one of the hour of a time videos of his and focus on him himself. And I know some of you guys don't like him. You guys think he's a kook, that he's crazy, that he might be lying to you, but he'll tell you, do your own research. And if you haven't done your own research just on him, he's already right and you're already wrong. Isn't that a hoot? And I'm saying hoot because he seems to say hoot quite often as well. Now, the reason why I think he's important to talk about, and look at that, right when I'm on, I get a thumbs down. I'm not kidding around. Someone does not like this topic, and that's great. That means I'm doing something right, because if I just get thumbs up all the time, that's telling me I'm not really doing anything to piss anybody off. But when I get thumbs down, yep, I'm doing something to piss someone off. And that someone probably doesn't want me showing any of this stuff. Hi, Kathy. Now, why is Bill Cooper important? Because he was a whistleblower. It's not a stretch to say that any of you guys watching me or any of the things that I say or any of the things that I do or any of the things that James or Dave or Ryan or anyone else that does this type of live streaming are pretty much supporters of Julian Assange, of Edward Snowden, of Chelsea Manning, of any whistleblower out there. You've got to ask yourself this: are you picking and choosing different types of whistleblowers based on what they're whistleblowing? Are you? Because if you are, why? I mean, if there's corruption or if there's things going on that the government's not telling us and someone's revealing it, even if it's crazy sounding, if it's something like MK Ultra or people who stare at goats types of stuff, are you gonna just say, you know, that's just, he's a kook, he's a crazy guy, he's a conspiracy theorist? And why are you even here if you're just going along with mainstream media and people who tout that people who listen to this stuff or watch this stuff are conspiracy theorists or crazy people anyway? Why are you here? So if you don't want to do the research, I'm going to show you the research of Bill Cooper, and he did his research and I did my research. So without further ado, I am restreaming from a video from PisstoffAmerican. It's an hour and 11 minutes and 44 seconds long, and we will do a discussion afterwards. And you don't have to be discussing this topic if you want. Ryan Bannock, his channel is live. You can join his channel and talk about anything, which is great. So here we go. Oh, wrong one. Let me restream it or reshare. I hate it when it does that. Here we go. Oh, messed up. Sorry, this is what happens when I do things live. Oh, I had it right. Okay.
I've drawn my line in the sand, and I'm going to do what's right by God, and I don't give a damn who cares or who likes it or who doesn't, even if it means I have to die on my doorstep.
William Cooper. Bill Cooper shot dead last night about 1:30 in the morning Eastern Time.
They had put out that Bill is not to be let back in that house alive. It was premeditated. Hitting Bill several times. Bill fell down right where the porch would start from the front door. That's where he fell. he was dead.
Even if it means I have to die on my doorstep.
What I'm going to talk to you about today comes from my heart, from my experience in life, from playing this role as messenger, which I take very seriously, from my efforts to wake up the American people, from my family, from all the letters that I get, the people that I talk to, just like I've talked to many of you here today. I've learned some things. And I think these things need to be passed on to you. And I think you need to start examining yourself, your agenda, your mission. Who are you? What are you about? What do you believe about America? Is it true? Are you helping to divide us more? Or are you helping to bring us together? Do you really understand what this country is all about?
If you listened to shortwave radio throughout the 1990s, you were bound to invariably come across the sound of a captivating voice in the wilderness. That authoritative and self-assured voice for 5 nights a week would educate us, enlighten us, and most importantly, warn us of things to come.
So they disguised their true intent and their true teachings, the esoteric, with a system of exoteric descriptions. That to the profane would mean one thing, and to the initiate or the adept would mean quite another. But that was then. This is now. What sort of creature inhabits the modern domain? Who is the modern man?
That voice spoke to us of matters esoteric and exoteric, political and supernatural, scientific and lawful. That voice was world-renowned author, radio show host, and ex-Naval Intelligence Officer Milton William Cooper, otherwise known as Bill.
I was eventually trained by Naval Security and Intelligence, and I was given a secondary NEC, which is Naval Enlisted Code, which was 9545, which is Internal Security Specialist. And an Internal Security Specialist is someone who protects classified information and protects areas, so to speak. And I had a specialty, which I was trained in, which was Pacific Area Intelligence Briefings. And I was eventually assigned to the Commander-in-Chief of the United States Pacific Fleet, who was Admiral Bernard Clary at that time, and served as a member of his intelligence briefing team. And basically all that means, we really had a wonderful job. You come in about 4 o'clock in the morning and you go through all the message traffic and everything. And what you do is what we did was we prepared an updated briefing on everything that was happening in his half of the world, which he commanded the Naval Forces and Marine Forces, as a matter of fact. And put all this together in a briefing where we would update him on ongoing operations, brief him about operations that were scheduled to begin, political situations, deployment of Soviet forces, naval forces, everything. And after the briefing was finished, between 8 and 10 o'clock in the morning, then we were done. We were finished. So it was what you call fat cat duty or gedunk duty in the Navy. It's got all different kinds of names. It's just really a wonderful job. Now, to be able to function in this job, I had to have a security clearance, which gave me access to the information that I had to need to know to help prepare these briefings. And when I first was assigned to the command, I was attached to the OPSTAT office under Lieutenant Commander Mercado, which was operational status reporting. And while I waited for my security clearance, and it took 6 months to get it, what I eventually ended up with was a top secret Q clearance with an SCI attachment, which means sensitive compartmentalized information, and there were no blocks. In other words, there was nothing confining me to only certain compartmentalized information. I had access to whatever the Admiral and his staff had access to, because we had to prepare briefings and brief these people on all of these things. And I'm sure that at first I was tested and wasn't shown a whole lot, but eventually when they began to have confidence in me, I began to see things coming across my desk that were just absolutely incredible. And a lot of it is really hard to talk about because it's so far outside the normal concept of reality for the average American that they're going to find a hard time believing any of it. Mm-hmm. But I saw documents that were labeled under the classification top secret, and the compartmentalized, or the compartment that was put into was called MAJIC, M-A-J-I-C, mm-hmm. Which told me that UFOs are real, which I already knew. I'd seen one.
Right.
But this went farther than that. It told me that they were extraterrestrial in origin, that there were 4 different extraterrestrial species or races visiting this Earth, and that they had actually entered into an agreement with the United States government with one of these species of alien beings to exchange technology, and it told me all the projects that was underneath this. Project Red Light was actually the testing of extraterrestrial craft. Project Plato was a diplomatic project. Pounce was the recovery of technology. Pluto was the application of that technology to our own secret space program, not the public space program. There are 2 different space programs. One is what the public gets to see, mm-hmm. Which is overseen by NASA, and the other one is a secret space program that nobody gets to see, which is really overseen by the Navy Department under specialized compartmentalized black projects, and what these people are doing in secret is just absolutely incredible. I also saw documents under an operation called Operation Majority, which outlined the plans to bring together a one-world government. It also included extraterrestrial information within that. Project Grudge, which was the second project. First was Sign, and then Project Grudge, which contained all of the extraterrestrial information up to a certain point. I forget the year cutoff. And then it was contained after that in another project called Project Aquarius, which was the accumulation of the whole history of alien interaction on planet Earth. But I have to say at this point that I don't know if those documents were really telling the truth or not. They could have been showing me these things so that eventually I would go out and talk about this. And maybe that'll become clear to you later why they may have done that. It could be real. So.
What you saw.
So immediately my head began to spin around, and I began to think, God, I've got to tell people that they're being manipulated. This is a lie. And it really, if the public were using their own intellect, they would know that it was a lie. The executive order quoted for this document was in the 92,000 something. I believe it was 92447, which is 92,447, and it was supposedly written by Truman. But Truman never wrote an executive order higher than 9,000. I mean, even today, there's no executive order with the number 92,000 on it. They've been consecutive since the beginning.
So it was clearly fraudulent.
So it's clearly fraudulent, but the public doesn't catch on to this. And here you got Stanton Friedman, one of the guys who implemented the contingency plan, Majestic, running around the country telling everybody it's not an executive order, it's a date, September 24th, 1947, which it very well could be a date. But it's listed in that document as being an executive order of the President of the United States, Harry Truman. And because of that, it's fake. And many other things. But specifically, that is the most glaring proof of fraudulent intent in the document. There are many other things in the document that also prove it's a forgery. But here they are. They're running this contingency plan, and here I am. I know all about it, and here's the public out there biting it. They even ran that thing in the New York Times, like a 2 or 3 page spread showing all the documents. So it had tremendous credibility lent to it by that action. And so I decided that I had to tell the public and get people on the right track, which is, the right track is don't believe anybody. Don't believe me. Don't believe George Bush. Don't believe anyone. You got to go out and you got to get proof in your hand before you can believe anything. And to do otherwise today is the biggest mistake that anyone can ever make. You begin believing people, putting your trust in them, that they're telling you the truth. I guarantee you, you're going to take a ride on a roller coaster you don't want to be on.
Now this controversy, and I say the very understatement controversy.
Yes.
It also is now extending, based on some things that you're revealing, into the Kennedy assassination.
Yes, in the set of documents, which really was literally 2 or 3 file cabinets of documents, called Operation Majority, I saw documents which told me what happened in Dallas and why. And basically what these documents said was that the intelligence community felt that John F. Kennedy was a threat to the national security, which translated into reality means was a threat to the New World Order, the one world government which they were actively in the process of forming.
Was there anything on record that indicated that he was out to, well, things that he did would threaten that New World Order?
Oh, absolutely. He had written an executive order. I don't remember the exact number now, but it's available to anybody that wants to go look it up. He had written an executive order ordering the printing of United States notes, which would have broken the back of the Federal Reserve, which is one of the major instruments of propelling the United States into the New World Order by destroying our economy, the basis upon which we live, the basis upon which our whole society is founded, is being ripped right out from under us. That was one. Number 2, he refused to provide air support for the invasion of Bay of Pigs, which ensured that would be a failure. He had threatened publicly on several occasions to disband the CIA and scatter it to the 1,000 winds. He had ordered, in the documents that I saw, he had ordered the intelligence community to prepare a plan to disclose the truth about UFOs to the public. Now, I don't know what that truth was. Could be that maybe there are no extraterrestrials. But whatever the truth was, he had ordered a plan to be prepared, that disclosure was going to be done according to that plan within the following year. And the intelligence community considered that to be out of the question. And according to the documents that I saw, his assassination was ordered by the policy committee of the Bilderberg Group, which is really the secret world government, and was carried out by agents of Division 5 of the FBI, the Secret Service, the Central Intelligence Agency, and the Office of Naval Intelligence, of which I was a part, in Dallas. And it said that the assassin, the man who actually administered the head wound, was the driver of the car, William Greer, a Secret Service agent, who used an assassination pistol built by the CIA for assassinations that was really an air gun that fired an exploding pellet or could fire a small hypodermic needle or a poison dart using any one of many different deadly poisons. Specifically, it said that he fired an exploding pellet which contained shellfish toxin, and that the act was plainly visible in a film withheld from the public. I looked for 16 years to find that film, and I finally found a copy that showed William Greer turn around and shoot the president. And since 1988, I've been showing that film wherever I'm able to show it to wake people up. It is not our government, though you have to understand, that is doing these things. It is not our government that's failing us. It's not the Constitution or the Bill of Rights that's a bad instrument. It is a group of men who belong to secret societies who have infiltrated our society and our government at all levels and are destroying it and subverting it from within. And every member of naval intelligence that I knew who was an officer was a 32nd or a 33rd degree Freemason. And I asked my commanding officer at one point, I said, why are all you guys Masons? He said, Masons are used to keeping secrets. It's part of their fraternity. So if you want someone who already knows how to keep a secret, you recruit Freemasons. Well, later on, I found out what the truth is. The truth is you're not going to be a naval intelligence officer unless you are a Freemason or a member of the Ancient Order of the Rose and Cross, but you have to be high degrees for that. I think the reason I was selected as a enlisted man is because I had belonged to the Demolay Society.
Which is what?
As a teenager. That's sort of the first level of Freemasonry. That's how they recruit teenagers and indoctrinate them into their principles so that they go right into Freemasonry when they become an adult. But I can tell you this, I began to reveal information in 1976, and I was physically attacked on 2 occasions. My skull was caved in, that's what all these scars are here. On the second attack, I lost my leg. They visited me in the hospital. They had no intention of killing me. They were delivering a message to me. Shut up. And that was the message that came through loud and clear. And 2 men who identified themselves with identification cards who belonged to the Defense Investigative Service, which was really the Defense Intelligence Agency, asked me if I was going to shut up or they were going to have to do it right. And I told them, I said, you don't have to worry about me. I'm going to be a good little boy for the rest of my life, and yeah, I'm going to shut my mouth. And I did for 16 years. Kept silent until I saw this UFO magazine in a bookstore, which indicated that they had implemented the contingency plan called Majestic. But if you want to know what I think the reason is, I believe that there are several. One, they've had a plan that's been in force since the 40s to debunk, ridicule, destroy anybody who ever talks about these subjects. And the public has been thoroughly indoctrinated that if you talk about any of these things that I'm talking about, you're just another nut. So the public, by and large, doesn't pay any attention to it. So in that sense, I'm not a threat. If the president had come on television and said, hey, this is what's going on, then they would have listened and they'd pay attention to it. But people like me, they perceive me as being just another loony bin, fruitcake, nut, which I assure you I'm not. But that's the perception that they've been brainwashed into believing. And so that's what they believe. Number 2, I am so much in front of the public from the very beginning when I began to talk. And that's how I protected myself, or at least that's what I thought would protect me, and so far it's proven to be right, was that if I got literally in front of the public overnight, in front of a large public, that they wouldn't do anything to me because it would substantiate what it was that I'm saying. And they certainly don't want to do that. It would also create a martyr. And martyrs create tremendously dangerous political movements that they don't want that either. So literally within a 24-hour period, I spent $27,000 mailing a thick packet of information all over the world to people I'd never heard of, didn't know. We went down and got some mailing lists and just mailed this stuff all over the world. And so literally, when people opened these packages in their mailbox, and it was a perfect plan because they couldn't stop it. They didn't even know I was going to do it in the first place. And since we sent it all over the world, once it was out, there's no way they could retrieve it. At least no way that I can conceive of. So literally within 24 hours, I was a public presence. And people were asking all over the world, who's Bill Cooper? Is this true? Look what I got in the mail. And just literally flipped the world over on its ear. And I've been in front of the public ever since. So I think basically those are the reasons. They don't believe that the public's really going to listen to me. And so far that's been true. There is a small group of people all over the world who are awakening, who are beginning to understand that they've been living their life in fantasy land and who are actively seeking the truth. But by and large, when the secret power structure says, as I've put in the first chapter of my book, right out of one of their own technical manuals, that a nation or world of people who do not use their intelligence are no better than animals who do not have intelligence, and thus are stakes on the table by choice and consent. They're absolutely right about the majority of people. It's one of the things that has been an illumination to me, is that they're not always wrong. And many of their goals are the right goals, but the method that they're using to reach that goal is the wrong method. In other words, if you set out to create a perfect world where there will never be any more killing, but to reach that point, you kill 2 billion people, you have become what you're trying to avoid.
Right.
And it can't happen that way.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to create a world of peace, it has to be done by peaceful methods.
Means.
Yeah, if you murder someone to destroy a murderer, you have become what it was you set out to destroy, and thus it wasn't destroyed at all. It was perpetuated by that very action. And that's what these men are doing. They rationalize everything they do so that they feel better about it. Mm-hmm. But what they are doing is becoming what it is that they want to get rid of. And the world will never be a safe place for anyone as long as there are men who do these things. It's all available to anyone who actively and diligently seeks it out. Everything that's in my book, Behold a Pale Horse, is everything in here, all the documents that are in here, everything that's in this book is in the public domain.
Can be substantiated?
Yes, and I intentionally wrote this book not using anything that wasn't available to the public to show people that, yes, if I can find this information, so can you. I have tons of stuff that's not available to the public. But as you can see by reading this book, you don't need that stuff because it's what you need is available to you. Public libraries are overflowing with the proof of what's really going on in the world, but nobody really utilizes it to the extent that they're able to pick this out and put it together. Another thing I've done for people is I've put it together for them so that they can see the overall picture rather than looking at small things and thinking that it's isolated. Nothing is isolated. It's all part of a big puzzle. And the puzzle is coming together, and when the puzzle is assembled, it's going to be a one-world totalitarian socialist government that nobody's going to like except the people that are running it. It's Hitler all over again. And the rationalization is we're going to create the world without war.
The utopia.
The utopia. But they will never create that utopia because they're not dealing with the problem that makes them want to create it, and that is the inherent flaw in each individual human being that makes us do the things that we do. Until that's overcome, there's never going to be a world without war or without rape or without killing or without robbery, and anybody that thinks that there is has already gone off the deep end. But this is the truth. Either these men are following the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation as it is in the Bible. They're either following it just like a plan and bringing the prophecies in there to pass to manipulate and control those who believe in those prophecies and neutralize them, so to speak. In other words, if this is written in the Bible and God has ordained it, who am I to resist? It must come to pass, so I'm not going to try to stop it.
Okay.
What a perfect way to neutralize the opposition right off the bat. Or there really is a God, and what he said was going to come to pass is coming to pass. And I named this, Behold a Pale Horse, from chapter 13 of the book of Revelations. The fourth horse, the fourth horseman of the apocalypse is the pale horse. And I looked, and behold a pale horse, and his name that sat upon him was Death. And hell followed with him, and power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth, to kill with sword, and with hunger, and with the beasts of the earth. And that is taking place now today. The fourth horseman is riding across the world now. That's what AIDS is all about. That's what all these little brush fire wars all over the world are all about. That's what's happening. That's why cancer cures are suppressed. It's because they fully intend to kill a minimum of 2 billion people by the year 2000. AIDS is an invention of man. It is not a natural disease, and it has been implemented and placed into the population as a population control. And when they did it, they had the cure before they did it. And when they've deemed that enough people have died or been killed, they will say, we have a cure for AIDS. And everybody will be called to report to some place to get an inoculation, which is going to do two things. One, it's going to stop AIDS in its tracks. And number two, it's going to implant a device which will be able to be used to track each individual person and maybe even to control those people. And that's what the pet implant program is all about. It's not about finding lost pets. They don't give a damn about pets, and they would never put a satellite in orbit to find a lost pet, but yet there's a satellite up there that they're using to find pets that have been implanted with these devices. They're testing this program on pets that's going to be used in human beings. And in the Los Angeles Times in 1989, they ran an article. It was 10 forecasts for the coming decade was the title of the article. I have a copy of it in my research center. And number 5, I believe it was number 5, in those 10 forecasts for the coming decade was chemical or electronic implants to control individual behavior on a 24-hour basis, unquote. So it's not hidden at all. It's there for anybody who wants to look. One thing I've learned about these men is they don't just do one thing. In case the public discovers what they're doing, or discovers that somebody's doing, whether they know who's really doing it or not, and stops it. What they have running is several concurrently running plans so that if one or two fail, the other ones are going to take care of the problem.
It sounds pretty hopeless. I mean, based on that scenario, is there anything, any uprising or what?
Yeah, there is, but it requires that people wake up. It requires that they really learn the truth instead of live their life in fantasy land. You see, because nothing can exist without the consent of the people. Unless they buy it, it's not going to happen. You have to understand the difference between capitalism, socialism, communism, what all of these things really mean. You have to understand that what the difference is between right wing and left wing. People, they use these phrases all the time, and they don't even know what these things mean. And it's just incredible to me to hear a socialist calling someone else a Nazi. Because Nazi means National Socialism. So here's a socialist calling a right-wing guy a Nazi, when what he should be calling the right-wing guy is anarchist. People on the right want no control. Mm-hmm. They're really anarchists. Okay?
So they would, in it...
They don't really consider you to be a threat unless you develop a large political following.
Oh, okay.
So, unless you have a large political following, you're not considered to be a threat to them. Because they figure that the people are too stupid to listen to you anyway. And generally, they're right.
So we're in the process of educating people then. Yeah. Is the best thing.
Education is 60 or 70% of the battle.
Yeah.
Because people automatically begin to do the right things once they learn what the truth is.
They're educated to it.
And that man's name is Robert Groden. He wrote High Treason, which is a bestseller out now on the Kennedy assassination. And he was one of the many so-called technical experts for the making of Oliver Stone's film called JFK. He's also a fake, a fraud, a traitor, a liar. He was hired by the House Select Committee on Assassinations based upon his resume, which says, very simply, that he is the world's foremost #1 photo analyst, which is a lie. He never went to school in photography. He never was a photographer. He never was a photo analyst. And I got to tell you right now that the world's #1 foremost photo analysts are all come out of the military intelligence community, who are trained to interpret high altitude photography and learn what really is there. He never served in that capacity either. He looked at the Zapruder film and he told Congress, he told the committee in testimony, he testified both in written and in verbal form that William Greer never took his hands off the steering wheel. And that's a blatant lie. I mean, anybody can look at the Zapruder film and see that William Greer takes his hands off.
Hello, sir?
I'm sorry, go ahead, my wife.
I understand. Well, I know you're, we'll get into what's been going on there in Arizona a little bit later. I really appreciate you taking out the time to do this program with your busy schedule. Where do you think things are going to be in the next 2 years?
Well, either Americans are going to wake up and they're going to stand up in unison and take up arms and challenge the federal government to step back within the boundaries of the Constitution, or there's going to be a civil war in this country. The only alternative to that is total enslavement of the entire human race on a global scale, because that's where this is going. This is all about a one-world totalitarian socialist government. It's about destroying all existing nation-states, destroying all existing religions, save the religion of those who are bringing this about, which is the secular humanist socialist religion.
That way you can devalue human life and kill people.
Well, but they're already doing that.
Yes, they are.
And they've already convinced the American people that it's okay. The people whose ancestors came to the New World to escape religious persecution in the Old World stood and watched the Branch Davidians burn, including all of their children, all of their women, and they cheered and said that it was because they were a bunch of religious fanatics. I heard Christians say that. I heard Orthodox Jews say that. I heard Baptists say it. I heard Catholics say it. And to their shame, I have to tell them that they are not religious, moral people. They are stupid, ignorant sheeple who are on the verge of enslavement, and they're going to deserve exactly what they get. I have no sympathy for them whatsoever anymore. I used to cry big alligator tears for them in their ignorance, and I used to do everything I could to wake them up. I've drawn my line in the sand, and I'm going to do what's right by God, and I don't give a damn who cares or who likes it or who doesn't, even if it means I have to die on my doorstep.
Well, now we're getting to what's been happening. The feds are saying that you didn't show up for a court date, but they never gave you a subpoena, did they?
We have never received any subpoena, no notification, no nothing.
No nothing, and now the newspapers are reporting that militiaman, they don't say best-selling author, military veteran, no criminal record, William Cooper, they just say Arizona militiaman, tax fraud and bank fraud is refusing to come into the loving arms of Janet Reno.
Not only will I not come in, but if the Civil War has to start right here, it will. I am not a tax fraud or a tax cheat. I pay all legal, lawful, and constitutional taxes, which I am required to pay. I've never defrauded any bank or any person in my entire life, and I will protect my rights with the tools given to me by the founders in case it should ever come to this. And if the rest of the sheeple want to proceed into the pens and get sheared and then continue up the ramp to the slaughter, that's their business. No matter what happens here, I win.
Some people are sitting back and saying, listen to Mr. Cooper talking about people being killed. That never happens. Governments never do that. Every government in the world this century has engaged in slaughter. Almost every government. Look at the giant death toll that's so-called communist. It's in the hundreds of millions this century.
Why do we have to look at the communists? It's happening right here in the United States. Has been for quite some time. The only ones that have reached the public eye are the Weaver family and the Branch Davidians in Waco, Texas. But it's happened on a large scale all across this country, in every state. It usually is contained at the local level. And one of the indications that you will know that I'm right is that you haven't seen what's happening here on any of the major news networks, and you're not going to, because I've taken a stance documented in the law. I posted it on my web page. I have stated that I am a portion of the unorganized militia of the state of Arizona in the United States of America for many years, and that my stance is well-grounded. I'm right. I have a right to do what I'm doing, and anybody that comes up here and tries to encroach upon my rights or take away the protection of the Constitution from me and my family is going to get a bullet. And that's just the way it is.
Just to go back to what you just hinted at is the compartmentalization of news. We stopped, myself and a few others in this town, stopped the Delta Force from coming and doing secret military training and paying off our police chief. Now, the San Antonio police chief, a man that you ought to be aware of, is Al A. Philippus, and I went down and got an interview face-to-face on videotape, and I've actually played the audio here on the show several times, where he said they tried to bribe him. They were very unprofessional. No was never no. They were out of their jurisdiction, and they wanted to use live ammunition. They're practicing taking over police stations. Shouldn't our police realize that they're going to be some of the first people that will be going?
Well, they might if they weren't stupid sheeple like the rest of the herd. But the truth is, the policemen came right out of the community where the sheeple live. Why would anybody think that they're going to be any smarter than the rest of the animals out there?
So you think that most of them will go along? Well, I told Philippus to his face on tape, I said, well, what you've done here, sir, you're probably going to pay for in the future.
Well, it's absolutely true. He is a big exception. There are only about 3 sheriffs in the entire country who know what their authority is and have the guts to take a stand. This is the only police chief that I've ever heard of who's taken the proper stand. So if you want to know if they're going to go along with it, yeah, they'll go along with it to get their little paycheck. See, they've sold their country out for what, $20,000 a year, $30,000 a year? That's pretty cheap, isn't it?
It's pretty sick. It is.
And for maybe they'll get a retirement check in 20 or 30 years. So they sold their whole country out. They sold their children's future. They sold their grandchildren's future and their great-grandchildren whom they haven't even seen yet.
Now, Mr. Cooper, I understand what you're talking about, and I find out more every day. Just a year ago, I still couldn't accept some of this, and I mean, even you yourself, when I talked to you last week, said it took you years of studying a long time ago to finally understand it all. And people's mindset, they think of the government as made up of the same go-along, get-alongs. They don't understand the avarice and just how vicious and demented and inbred these people are.
Well, in the first place, you're wrong in your premise. They don't think at all. That's why commercials are 30 seconds long. That is the attention span of the average American sheeple. They can't think beyond 30 seconds. That's why no American company, our business, our group plans ahead more than about 2 or 3 months.
That's true. We have no long-term strategic goal for this country.
That's right, and that's why we're getting beat by the Marxist socialist communists, because they have 5-year plans, 10-year plans, 15-year plans, 25-year plans, and 50-year plans, and they stick to them.
Man, absolutely. Well, it's scary then. What's going to happen? It's just going to be, I think that
either the American people are going to become slaves within just a few years, and it's going to be an enslavement like nobody can even dream of, and it's going to extend worldwide, and we're the only people that can stop it, because we're the only people in the world still who have the capability,
have the arms,
and the arms to be able to stop it. Or there's going to be a civil war which will last between 5 and 15 years to restore constitutional Republican government and freedom and liberty worldwide.
Well, that's the point. Even though most people are sheep, there is that between 5 and 10 million people that once it starts, I think more people will come out. And I don't want this to happen. This is just going to wreck the nation.
I don't want it to happen either. Ever since I saw the plan back in 1971 and 72 when I was on the intelligence briefing team for CINCPAC Fleet to bring about one world totalitarian socialist government, and when I saw that the United States was behind the whole thing, this is not coming from without. The United States created the United Nations.
Yes,
the United States created the European Union that has just been formed.
Well, you're saying the United
States is acting as the world police force right now.
Well, you're saying the United States. Wouldn't you say a foreign aristocracy out of New York and Boston?
Nope.
That controls our nation?
The United States.
Okay,
Corporate United States, with its headquarters in Washington, D.C.
District of Columbia.
It is the stated and avowed policy of the United States government to create world government over the ashes of all sovereign nations and existing religions around this world.
Why don't you...
I'm telling you that I saw that plan while I was in the Office of Naval Intelligence on the intelligence briefing team, the Commander-in-Chief of the Pacific Fleet.
Would you elaborate on that just a little bit?
That's what Behold a Pale Horse is all about.
I understand.
That's what's in that book.
Well, I know the story, but a lot of people that are listening, and I'm sure that will go out and get Behold a Pale Horse, will talk about those military briefings. And I guess these people were proud that they were part of this power?
Oh, absolutely. This has been a goal for this. It's the reason this country was founded, and Americans don't understand that. The founding fathers, many of them were deists. They were members of the secret societies. Some of them were members of the Illuminati. They created this country and gave the common man freedom for the first time in the history of the world, made him a king in his own right. They told him what he had to do to keep his freedom and what he would lose if he didn't do it. And when they did this, giving the common man freedom, it toppled all the kings and queens off their thrones all around the world, and that was the major goal of establishing this country. If the common man could have been vigilant and maintained his freedom and not given in to the I want, and I deserve, and you got to feed me, and you got to do this, and you got to take care of me, and change my diaper, and wipe my butt, and get me a job, and entertain me, and all that kind of stuff, which always leads back into what they call democracy, which always leads into socialism, which end goal stated by Marx and Lenin is communism.
What did you first think?
Said democracy is absolutely indispensable to socialism.
What did you first think when you saw this openly being discussed in the top levels of the military?
Well, it shocked the hell out of me, but they thought I was one of them. It was an accident that I got in there. I'd been a member of the DLive Society when I was 13 years old, only attended 3 meetings, and then my father was transferred to Japan. I never saw another lodge and never went to another meeting, and that was the end of that. When I filled out all my documentation for my top secret QSI security clearance, which was required to be able to work in the command center and on the briefing team at CPAC Fleet, I didn't see DLive on there, so I checked Freemason. And when I checked Freemason, that's what opened all the doors and got me the security clearance and put me in those positions to be able to see what I saw. And I think the hand of God was working when that happened so that I would be able to warn his people of what was coming. And I've been doing that ever since. I didn't see absolutely everything, but I saw enough to give me an edge and a vast head start on anybody that's ever lived before in the public sector that's not normally privy to this information. And I spent the last, well, ever since researching to find out what it all meant and where we're going.
Well, just to go back to what's happening here locally in Central Texas, we know that there are dozens of different alphabet soup agencies that have the helicopters with the night, with the forward infrared looking radar, and all the rest of this, but why are they gearing up like this? Why is our county building a 3-acre under the roof helicopter base? Just the warehouse is 3 acres under the roof. Why are our police going and training at Fort Hood with the military? What does this mean to the public?
Well, because they know what's coming. They know that there's a hardcore group of American men and women who are devout, religious, moral people who love freedom and are dedicated to the concepts of liberty and freedom and will fight to protect and defend constitutional Republican government against anything that comes along. And when that begins, it's going to be a terrible, terrible thing. I've spent most of my adult life trying to warn people and wake up enough people so that this did not have to happen, because I know it's going to be terrible.
Now, President Clinton has now openly come out, and I'd actually read what they were pushing 3 years ago, and I was talking about it, about the national ID card and biometrics, thumb scanning, retina scanning. And since '94 in Texas, they've been thumb scanning us to get driver's license, and people just stampede in there like sheep. We had a big protest down there where I was arrested, I guess it's 6 or 8 months ago now. What does it mean to the public when we have one card that our insurance and our credit cards and our bank accounts and our receipts and everything is on that one card?
It means the public is stupid and they're already a hair's breadth away from total enslavement. If they had any brains at all, they would have said, no, I'm not taking that. And if you don't like it, that's tough. And all those businesses and all those driver's license bureaus and all those the revenue that it brings in for all those cities and counties would have just evaporated in smoke, and they would have backed down and said, okay, you don't have to do it. We'll do it another way. But they're too stupid to do that. They don't understand that the power in this country is the power of the people, and that they don't have to do anything that's outside the bounds of the Constitution. And the government can be held within the bounds, the restraints that the Constitution put upon it, that our founding fathers created so that the American people could never be enslaved.
What is the
They
main...
knew that
Yes.
nobody could come and invade this country and enslave the American people. The only way it could be done is from within if the American people allowed it to be done.
What is the main goal of biometrics, retina scanning, thumb scanning? In my opinion, it is total loss of control of your destiny. If the IRS doesn't like you now, they'll just come take your house. If the IRS doesn't like you now, they'll just come and garnish your paycheck. But in the future, if they don't like you, they'll shut your card off.
Well, let me give you a vision of the future. There will be no money. There won't be any driver's licenses. There won't be any insurance cards or anything like that. Everybody will have an account on a computer. Everybody will have a computer chip implant somewhere on their body that will access the computer. Everybody, when they go to work, will get so many credits for that work, and they can go out and wave their little computer chip in their hand or whatever it is under a scanner at the supermarket and buy whatever they've got credits to buy. And if they don't have credits, they got to stay home until they get some credits.
Let me stop you for a second. I read this almost every week, at least once, and it's from the April 27th, 1997 Time Magazine, The Future of Money. I'm sure you've read it. And it openly on page 51, and anybody out there that thinks that Mr. Cooper or I are BSing you, go read it. And it says the best part, now this is their words, the best part about it is your daughter in the near future can have a chip under her skin and you won't have to buy the drinks for her at the bar. I mean, everything's insane about that paragraph. And the whole 10-page article is about how great the smart card is and then the chip. And as we know, Time Magazine is a filthy, elitist propaganda rag. So I can't see how anybody would deny this. But I guess most people only see it as a convenience.
What's insane about it is that the American people think that that would be convenient or that that would be good for them. It is the ultimate in-run goal to enslave the populace and to steal what's left that's not already stolen by the elite who are engineering and machinizing all of this stuff to make it come about.
Now,
the goal of a debt-based economy is not to get caught stealing. And that's what they're doing, stealing the wealth and the substance and the nation right out from under us. And that's the only end result that can come out of a debt-based economy. And the only way that they can't get caught is if the people allow them to go to a cashless system. Then they can never get caught. But if they don't go to a cashless system, eventually the economy will collapse and they're going to get caught.
That's exactly it.
And that's why they want to go to a cashless system, and that's why they ultimately have to. Anybody understands how this economy works and what the end result of a debt-based economy where the interest is never created or printed and the way that it works.
It's a fiat Ponzi scheme.
That it's got to collapse or they have to go to a totally cashless system in order that they don't get caught and are able to perpetuate the theft.
So what you're saying is that we have a fiat Ponzi scheme, con game government monetary system based on fractional reserve banking, and that the money machines are printing out of control. I talked to Congressman Ron Paul just a few weeks ago, and he said, yes, the Federal Reserve is printing 10% more money into the supply every 6 to 8 months. So this is creating this false prosperity, and the public just loves it, but meanwhile they're just coaxing us in to this cashless society so the fairy tale can continue.
That's exactly right.
But talk a little bit about how you were at the top of Bill Clinton's FBI list.
Well, ever since 1988, when I began telling the world, not just the American people, but the world, about Majesty 12, which is the plan to enslave the human race in a world totalitarian socialist government, the merger of the military of the United States and what used to be known as the old Soviet Union under NATO, which is occurring now, to create the world police force. Most people don't understand that NATO is an arm of the United Nations. It was formed under the auspices of the United Nations Charter and takes its orders from the Security Council. Warsaw Pact was also formed under the auspices of the United Nations Charter, and was an arm of the United Nations and took its orders also from the Security Council. The Cold War was a total farce, and that's why we never had any military conflicts with the Soviet Union.
What is your opinion of the UN passing its new World Court?
Well, if they've passed a World Court, how can they have a World Court if there is sovereign nations? Because sovereign nations are not subject to any courts but their own. So how can they have a world court unless there's a world government to which sovereign nations have given up their sovereignty? Does the Constitution for the United States of America say that we are subject to the dictates or the jurisdiction or the rulings of a world court? Does it say that anywhere in the Constitution?
No, it doesn't. And when I watch the local news, all I hear is how wonderful the United Nations is. Our public are being indoctrinated about this. You have no criminal record. You were honorably discharged from the military. You're an author, shortwave radio host, and you have a monthly newspaper. And suddenly they come out against you, the feds, and say that you cheat on your taxes from 92 to 94, but you told me on the telephone that you haven't been paying taxes for 12 years.
No, that's wrong.
Okay, you've been paying legal taxes.
Filed or paid the so-called income tax
to private banks,
really an excise tax
to private banks
for almost it's either 11 or 12 years. I forget which. I've never made a secret of that. I am not liable for the so-called income tax administered by the so-called Internal Revenue Service, and I am not, but I do pay all lawful and constitutional taxes which I am required to pay and always will.
Give us an example of a lawful tax.
Well, a lawful tax would be a state sales tax down at your local grocery store. A lawful tax would be a property tax for which you paid for it with the fiat Federal Reserve notes instead of gold or silver coin. You can't pay off a debt with a debt. So you never really purchase anything in this country, in this debt-based economy, with the fiat Federal Reserve notes. All you do is take possession under a lease, and the ownership stays with the government. That's why you get a warrant deed when you pay off your house instead of the patent title to the property, and that's why you get a certificate of title when you think you paid for your automobile instead of the actual patent title to that property.
This is all being done with contract fraud, and people can't even...
It is fraud. It's all fraud.
That's why, I catch myself as I get deeper and deeper into this, becoming more angry, more flat out. I guess I'm at the point where you said that you were several years ago, where you're just sad about it because you see the people thinking they have a grasp of what's happening in the civilization. But I've read enough history, I know enough about the country and what's been happening to realize that pretty much everything that you're told in the media has lies weaved right into it.
Oh, yeah. The American people are standing inside the gates of Disneyland holding their e-ticket, which is expired. None of the rides are working, and they're just having a great time.
Well, anyways, so you think in the next 2 years we're headed into some...
I didn't say in the next 2 years. I said in the next very few years. I don't have a crystal ball. God does not whisper in my ear. I'm not a prophet, and I'm not a psychic.
Well, sir,
but I can
I'm none of those things either.
From what I saw in that plan when I was with O&I, and what I have researched since then tells me that within a very few years, the American people are either going to be totally enslaved in the worst enslavement that you can even dream of, or there's going to be a civil war actively being fought under the most terrible conditions in this country.
Well, I don't have a crystal ball, but it's pretty simple to predict what these guys are going to do now that they're out in the open. I mean, 10 years ago it wasn't so out in the open. Now you turn on the TV, UN World Court, Clinton pushes national ID card, you turn on Lair News Hour, secret military teams are trading with your local police. It's pretty much in your face now, and I don't know if Clinton wants to leave office, or maybe he wants to go be head of the UN or something. Who do you think, as leaders from your intelligence networks, do you think are on the horizon? Who do you think the next president will be? Do you think?
Why do I care? They're not my leaders, and it's not my government anymore.
So the point is,
they have subverted my government, destroyed it from within, and my only hope is that I can find enough good American patriots who are moral, who are good men, who understand what liberty and freedom is all about, to go in there and restore constitutional Republican government by any method that it requires, including the force of arms. So otherwise, my children and my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren are going to be slaves.
So you've totally turned your back completely on the festering system, and
it's not my system. It is not operating within the boundaries of the Constitution. They have thrown the Constitution out. It is treason in operation. There is a subversion of government going on as we speak in the halls of government throughout this country, not just in Washington, D.C. And
so you're saying it is criminal enterprise, incredibly sophisticated, controlling Hollywood, the universities, and the major mass media through foundation money and through control of finance, and all their whores and all their pomps and all their little agents don't mean a damn to you. You're going to take care of your family, try to educate the public, and just continue to prepare. And you're saying that you have not committed any crimes, you're not bothering anybody, and if the feds tried to come and take your home and take your family, that you're going to oppose them with force of arms.
Absolutely. They have declared war upon me and all patriots and everybody in this country who is a loyal constitutionalist, who has taken an oath to protect and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And if the Civil War has to start on my doorstep, that's as good a place as any. So it's fine with me.
So the Civil War has to start
somewhere. Might as well start right here.
Now, the federal attorney general out there, is it Rivera? Jesus Rivera? He's saying that they're going to proceed against you with prejudice and caution. I think...
well, you're reading an article that you read in the Arizona Republic.
Yes, I am, the communist newspaper.
Never tells the truth. I can guarantee you that that's not what he said. I can guarantee you that what he quotes that Sheriff Arthur Lee said is not the truth. We spoke to Sheriff Arthur Lee last night. Arthur Lee says that I'm right, that he has jurisdiction over the feds in this county, and he has told them not to come in this county and harass this family.
Absolutely. Well, we've learned that with the press, that they will flat out not twist the truth, but when they need to, they will flat out lie. Flat out lie.
Flat out lie.
Well, that's great then. You're not in too much trouble if you've got the sheriff on your side. People don't realize the power of the sheriff.
Not just the sheriff. This is a good American community here, and there is a very strong militia, and not just here, but good, solid Americans all across this country are sick and fed up, and we know that if they attempt anything here, there's going to be a war the likes of you can't conceive of what's going to happen.
What can people here in Central Texas do to try to fix what's happening to the federal government? Or are you saying now it's so shot?
You cannot fix it. It cannot be fixed. Cannot be fixed.
All we can do...
They're not going to let anybody fix it. Your vote doesn't mean a damn thing, and if you haven't figured that out yet, then you're too far gone to even be listening to me.
Exactly. That's what Congressman Ron Paul, and I was shocked when even he said that. He said to me in the past and to my associates that all he can do is try to get the word out up in Washington, that he really doesn't have any power. All he can do is try to raise alarm bells about fascistic, communistic legislation that comes rolling past him every day. And he said that he thinks things are far gone. I said, so, sir, the sun is setting on the Republic. And he goes, well, it's pretty much already set. And,
that's correct.
And we're going into this thing full bore. And
that's why the socialists talk about the new dawn.
What is the new dawn?
The new dawn is the bringing to fruition of the new world order. Their totalitarian, socialist, utopian world.
Technocracy too, sir. Doesn't technology tie into their little fun games with the...
That's their biggest weakness. I just hope they cling to their technology with all they've got. I hope they train every soldier to use computers and not be able to function without a satellite uplink and all of that stuff, so we can just kick their butts all the way back to Washington, D.C. and try them for the crimes that they're guilty of.
Sir, I don't want to get into the things that you've already sacrificed and done for your country, but you've actually been threatened quite a bit, and people have actually attempted to try to kill you, haven't they?
Oh, yes. Almost succeeded a couple of times.
In fact, you lost...
My head caved in. I've lost my left leg in this fight. We've been shot at. We've been threatened. They've made it so that we couldn't work for anybody. But, you know, that's exactly what happened to the Founding Fathers. They lost everything. They lost their families. They lost their children. They lost their wives. They lost their property. They lost limbs. They lost everything.
And it was only really 2% at the start of the revolution that got it going, wasn't it?
Well, I believe it was about 3.8% of all the people in the colonies helped found this nation and fought the Revolutionary War to create it and give what they called their posterity liberty and freedom. And the United States government was created to protect the rights of individuals, whether or not they voted. No matter what happened, they were supposed to stay within the bounds of the Constitution and protect the rights of individuals, and guaranteed us in that document constitutional Republican government, not just in Washington, D.C., but in every state, every county, every city of this country.
So, Mr. Cooper, you think that the feds may be backing down simply because you're in a strong community, or do you think they could just fly over one night and launch a hellfire attack with a...
Doesn't matter what they do, they lose, and they know it. They've stepped on their dicks this time. No matter what they do, they lose, and they know it.
Because if they make a martyr out of William Cooper...
Not only that, I'm right within the law. I am right under the Constitution, and I am right within the law, and it's all posted on my website and internet.
So you're saying you've dotted all your I's, you've crossed all your T's.
Absolutely.
You've drawn your line in the sand.
They lose. They either back down and get within the bounds of the Constitution, they lose. They come up here and they kill us all, they lose. And we're still free. Now, a lot of people aren't going to understand that, but I'll still be free.
No, you were mentally free. You didn't bow down, you didn't play the game, you didn't compromise. You died with your morals and with what you believed, and you were not altered by their propaganda or their intimidation.
That's right, and none of us are afraid. We are Christians. We know that if we do the right thing, God is going to smile at us when we get to those pearly gates. However people view those pearly gates, I don't care.
Absolutely.
The truck was parked. It was unmarked. No one was in uniforms. They did not identify themselves. That was it. They said that in their briefings the very next day. They were parked here. They intentionally had a vehicle with an incredibly loud stereo system, and they made a lot of noise themselves, you know, hooting and hollering. Bill came down and told them, this is based on the law enforcement people that told me this, that were involved that night. Bill told them if they didn't leave, he was calling the police, and they shunned him on. So he then turned around to go back to his home up there and call the police. Now, at that point, they were here, and he just basically turned right there, just out on this lot a little bit, and went on back. Right here out of this juniper was a spot I was told by law enforcement officials that the first deputy came out right at Bill's truck, because he was cruising along slow, watching them more than likely in his rearview mirror, me knowing him very well, to make sure they didn't follow him back over there. He came out, and this is the point where Bill knocked him off sheerly with his arm, not ran over anything. That guy basically just landed on his butt because Bill hit the gas. So he made this little curve here, and this is where he stopped. At this point, according to law enforcement officials, from their briefing, and then plus people on site right then, when he stopped, one more person approached the vehicle, but not running. And that's when he did the open hands thing and a sign of, like surrender or whatever. Hit up on the bank, just trying to avoid the vehicle that then came shooting up here, full bore, full speed, came ripping up the hill. So obviously the people at the end had communications with people down there on the road. Must have verified that Bill had turned around coming back to his house. So they came zooming up here in a vehicle. He's avoiding them. He comes up on this bank. It was testified as that by the law enforcement reports, as well as the evidence on his vehicle that that is what happened. The exhaust system was tore off the bottom. He then proceeded right there past the small elms and the driveway to the front of his yard. I was told by the law enforcement officials that were on site and ones that had to come up afterwards and get a briefing so they knew what went on roughly, because public was obviously going to be coming to try to come up here, and news crews and all whatnot. They had put out that Bill is not to be let back in that house alive. It was premeditated. It was put out, Bill will not be allowed back in alive. Right here at Bill's home is where he pulled up. His front of this vehicle would be towards me. The other vehicle was parked with the front towards the other end of the street. Bill ran around the back of his vehicle, which would be towards the driveway. He then proceeded across his yard. This is when the shooting began, according to their reports. The vehicle that was parked here, besides his truck, which was pointed that way, he had bought for Jessica, his daughter, and then she didn't want it, so it was just sitting here. Sheriff Goldsmith ran around the back of it, which would be towards me, and got on this street side to use the vehicle as protection. At that point, Bill is approximately halfway in the yard and still running with his back towards him. They claim at that point he began shooting, which was with his right arm just thrown backward, haphazardly pulling the trigger of a .38 snub-nose Smith & Wesson. From where we're standing would be essentially the angle that Goldsmith would have been standing, but closer. Marina's would have been by the 58 Chevy, which would be equivalent to that truck, but up all the way to the wall. Next to that end post of the front porch. Bill was supposedly shooting backwards like this, which would be back towards the street in reality, that direction. When he hit Marina's, that angle does not work at all. Plus, the bullet hole in the glass of the 58 Chevy indicates a bullet path of approximately this direction through the driver's roll-down window and out the passenger corner of the windshield, indicating clearly it went towards the dome in town, which is the high school field for playing during the winter. At that point, Goldsmith opened fire, hitting Bill several times. Bill fell down right where the porch would start, and the dirt would meet the concrete sidewalk. Next to the planter, you can just slightly see raised on this side favoring me from the front door. That's where he fell, and according to them, they quit shooting and he was dead.
An Apache County Sheriff's deputy is in the hospital after being shot in the head by a so-called militia member.
Now, what we know is that militia member is dead. Our Gary Harper has the very latest on what's going on with that story. Gary?
Marty Scott, this all happened in a little town called Eager, Arizona, which is just on the eastern side of the state of Arizona. It's almost on the border of New Mexico. This is what we know so far. Sheriff's deputies, we understand, were trying to serve some type of arrest warrant on a man by the name of William Cooper. He's also known as Bill Cooper. He reportedly has been known to be hostile toward law enforcement, so sheriff's deputies apparently disguised themselves as a bunch of rowdy teenagers in the back of a pickup truck in hopes of luring Cooper out, and it apparently worked. However, when Cooper realized what was happening, he reportedly pulled a gun and shot a 40-year-old deputy in the head. During the gunfight, Cooper himself was shot and he was killed. Now, this is what we know about Bill Cooper. Officials say he belongs to some kind of militia movement and has published several anti-establishment articles. He has a website, we understand, and on that website he acknowledges that there is an arrest warrant for him, but he writes, and we're quoting here, any attempt by any federal government agent or anyone else to execute the unlawful arrest warrants will be met with armed resistance. Any person who attempts to kidnap our children will be shot upon discovery. And that is apparently what happened earlier this morning. Sometime after midnight, Cooper reportedly pulling a gun and shooting a 40-year-old Apache County Sheriff's deputy in the head. That Sheriff's deputy, we understand, has been flown to Phoenix, where he is in a hospital. We are trying to get his condition right now. We do not know exactly what his condition is, and we understand that the militia member, in this case Bill Cooper, was shot to death. We do have a crew en route to Eager, Arizona, and we'll have a lot more coming up on tonight's news.
When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founder.
I believe this government is corrupt at its core. Its actions are criminal. I no longer recognize their right to lead.
Okay, just give me a moment and I'll get the invite, which I'll post at the description box in the YouTube description. If anyone wants to talk about it for a while, I do know Ryan Bannock was live streaming, so I don't want to take away too much from that, but I think this is a good time to talk about William Bill Cooper. For people who don't know about him, I know a lot of people still have their reservations, think he's a crazy loon, kook, wrong about everything. Maybe one little snippet is true, but who knows? If you don't do your research, or even about him, how do you know about anything else? Because if you do your research, you'll eventually get back to Bill Cooper. That's where I've gotten to. So think about being in his shoe, being in his position before the era of the internet. You're going to be a whistleblower. How are you going to do it? And the things that he saw, he even admitted it, that it's a little bit too crazy to believe. I mean, he pretty much didn't even believe it. He said it was probably a setup, that just to see if he reported or someone reported this to any type of media, just to see if you were being able to keep a secret. Because if you end up going to the public, he snark, and saying, hey, this is what the government's saying and doing, this is one of their projects, and the government can say, you know what, it was just a test to see if he can keep a secret, and obviously he couldn't. So anyways, everyone knows that this is just crazy, it's not true, and so that's the official story. And so he had to do his research, and he actually had what I think he said 17 years before he revealed it to the public, because he saw something in Time magazine about UFOs. And so he was like, all right, this is false. Can't have the American people believe in it. This is everything that's going on with UFOs. It's most likely a big hoax, that UFOs, aliens outside don't exist. What it is that it's just a means to an end, that they will to unite all the governments to work together to fight off one invading force. And this is mentioned plenty of times by different famous people, different leaders of countries, that, you know, hey, one way that we can make sure that we all work together and stop fighting wars against each other is if there's one big enemy, one big battle to fight against one big force. What do you think, Snork, Isaac Garden?
Well, it's always possible that some of what he says is true.
Yeah, I mean, he even says it, not to believe him.
But when he goes out on the limb in some claims. Now, when did he die?
2001, November 6th. He predicted 9/11, and he's thinking that a lot of people think that he died because of his prediction about 9/11 back.
And again, that might be possible. But some of his claims got to be thrown right out. The ability to read dog IDs from space.
Well, there have been a lot of books on it too. If you look at Cybernetics by Norbert Wiener in 1948, also Microchip Implants, Mind Control, and Cybernetics by Rauna-Leena Luukkanen-Kilde. He was a medical doctor, former medical chief officer of Finland, and a whole bunch of stuff. We're talking about implants and how they're going to get it to the point where it's communicated by satellite, not directly, but through different types of frequencies that are rooted up to, you know, just the same way how our phones work.
In other words, what's possible in the future.
Yeah.
But what's possible now? Because I saw a website today. I popped in thinking it'd be a discussion, and one woman was saying doctors sneak in during the night and put implants in her heart to monitor her thoughts and something like that. That is delusion. Just doesn't happen.
But he's just reporting it. That was what he saw. He doesn't even know if it's true or not. He's just doing his research.
Right now, the limits of technology for your dog, a vet is lucky to read them at a foot.
Well, to be fair, to play devil's advocate a bit, like, we don't know what's technologically possible. We don't.
Well,
like, we know what's available. We know what's available to us.
Yeah.
You know, we don't know what's possible. And as far as, and we shouldn't conflate
the secret government.
We shouldn't conflate. Excuse me, sir. We shouldn't conflate other cases with the points that he brings up. You know, we have to examine them on their own.
But
as far as like the chip, the woman with the chip and all that, that's irrelevant.
But what do you guys think about him? Is he us? I mean, oh, go ahead, Amanda. Hi, by the way.
Okay. I think what he was saying about the chip in the animals is not that a satellite can read them yet. He was actually being sarcastic. He was saying, if you think that they really care about your dogs, and you know, and he was putting down their thinking, and he was saying in the future they're going to have that, but they're lying to people with pets.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, he was saying that it was a test run, right, for humans
to get us used to. But I don't see him as saying that satellites could read the pets yet.
I think they're mixing up. There was a case where somebody was wanted and took their pet to a vet, and they were registered, you know, through that, and they were tracked through what was on the database. Didn't give them like a GPS location where the dog was. Central database said where this person lived with their dog. And
Maybe she's a meth addict.
It's weird.
Are you there?
Some
Can you
other
hear us
problem.
now?
Yeah.
There's some issue with
my service.
Okay.
Weird.
Yeah, I'm thinking she does need medical professional help. And what I see with a lot of people who believe they're being chipped, why do they think they're
okay?
It's one thing to know where people are. It's why does everybody need to have a chip and a control on them?
All right, give me one. All right, I want to segue off of this real quick because we're just kind of nitpicking on one little thing out of the whole thing that was aired. First off, let me know your opinions. Was he a whistleblower?
He probably was.
Yeah, I think so.
It's probable.
Sometimes I think it's the exact opposite. Is he might be throwing out so many off the wall things to ruin his own credibility, so that when he does say something that's real, people don't believe it.
Yeah, I mean, he's mentioning that when he was looking through all this stuff as a commander of the naval intelligence and all the stuff that they have is like, they're even within them, within their system, they're going to have a couple of like throwaways. It's like having some counterfeits with the real stuff, just in case someone doesn't keep their secrets, some of it can't be. So does that mean something like Edward Snowden, some of the things that he revealed? Do you think some of those things that he revealed is the same thing? Like some of the
a limited hangout or a double
what? Like, can you expand on that a little bit? Like, what do you mean? Is it the same thing?
So some of the things that Bill Cooper reports on what was revealed to him during his time in the Navy as a naval intelligence officer are a little bit too crazy, just like magic, the MAJIK or MAJIC, which is just about the UFOs and things like that, or the chips and things. So Edward Snowden, when he reveals all the things that the NSA are doing, which is, mass surveillance and things like that, could some of those things that he let out to the public also be like counterfeit stories, stuff that really isn't being done or being worked on, just in case anyone decides to whistleblow, that they're actually just also revealing some fake, false stories.
Yeah, there's lots of disinformation campaigns and disinformation campaign agents. I mean, it's a possibility. The other benefit you have,
but from Snowden,
the other possibility you have by using these people is you act like a zit, which means that you put out all this shit, right, and then you attract the real crazies, and then you can follow the real crazies because they follow your puppet, who's putting out all kinds of crazy shit.
But Evan was asking about Snowden. Do you think that of Snowden?
It's completely possible that, he doesn't even have to be aware of it. That's the thing.
And I've never thought about Snowden, but I've always thought about it with the Clintons. I've always thought that they knew they had bad stuff out there, and I believe that they were the source of all of the stories about themselves, just to throw out so many screwball stories that everything seems like screwball.
Oh, geez, let's not even mix the Clintons with this.
I mean, the Clintons are the ones that pretty much had him killed. He was targeted by the Clintons from the FBI, and we know that the Clintons targeted people they didn't like through the IRS. So that's not a far-fetched idea, although that's giving the Clintons a lot of credit as to planning ahead. But I don't know. I wouldn't put it past them to think like that, Snork. The Clintons.
From our vantage point, it's so hard to tell. I mean.
Yep.
And I mean, think about some of us in the independent media, or at least some of the ones with much higher views and subs. We call them truth tellers because they're telling the truth, or we consider them telling the truth. But are they always right? Not necessarily. But do we feel that they're actively lying to us?
No.
We don't think so either. And that's why
Jamal works with the Mossad.
And we know you work with Jenks, so we know your angle there. So I mean, that's why this is important. One person can get it wrong through their research. They could back it up with someone else who did maybe different research, but kind of the same thing, has different results as for what their thoughts are, and compare notes. And that's what I'm hoping that we do here is I can present something to you guys and reveal like the sources that I have, and then someone will just say, "Oh, that source? What? We already know that that's false." And then someone tells me, gives me some links and some sources, and shows me, and like, yeah, I was wrong. And pretty much that's how it works. But
that would hurt my heart if Jamarl ever lied on purpose.
Yeah. And so, okay, so we could consider Bill Cooper a whistleblower. We could consider him a truth teller. We don't think he's actively lying to us. And guess what? He was assassinated. That's the one big thing. As we know that as far as the news story, the official story, and even the presented story by the independent sources, independent radio, they say that the police were disguised as teenagers in a pickup truck in order to lure Bill Cooper in, because they had someone before call in and saying that Bill Cooper was telling certain kids to leave because they were being rowdy and stuff like that. Now, he's not like someone who ended up being like a millionaire commentator like Alex Jones, which he was interviewed in this one. What's interesting is if you keep researching and watching, you'll notice that Alex Jones lies about Bill Cooper, and Bill Cooper replies saying Alex Jones is a liar, is a bleeping liar.
Well, you're aware by the time that he was killed, he had the federal marshals were after him for tax evasion.
Yeah.
So I wonder if because they will do shit to spy on you and find you in those cases. So I wonder in the last year of his life if he just became so ultra paranoid that he just began shooting like that, you know?
Geez, what's with my connection? Okay, it's good. My connection is really iffy, and it shouldn't be. But I am in middle of nowhere, Nebraska, so that could be a reason. So is he us? Because I feel like he was us. He was saying, don't believe any of us. Do your own research. Trying to get. We know that we're in a small minority. We think we're in the majority, but majority actually keep watching mainstream media. Keep thinking that you have to vote for lesser two evils. Keep thinking. Well, maybe you guys aren't there yet, but keep thinking that your vote really matters. That's going to end up choosing someone to get elected that isn't selected by either the Republicans or Democrats or whoever's behind those two parties. I mean, I feel like we're just discovering him. Basically, how did things work before internet and telecommunications like this, teleconferencing? I mean, it happened through radio, small radio talk shows. It happened through emailing, or not emailing, but mailing packets of information to people, mailing VHH tapes. They didn't have CDs. Well, they probably had CDs. They didn't have really DVDs or anything back then. They didn't have you couldn't really transfer video files very easily. I mean, it wasn't getting to that point in the 2000s where that became big and mainstream.
When was DARPANET founded? Like the mid 60s or something? It's when they created DARPANET. Mid or late 60s.
That sounds right, or early 70s.
Yeah, I don't remember it till the late 70s.
Yeah,
I don't know what actually happened. I'd never had encountered it until the late 70s.
I'll have to look. I'm pretty sure it was around 1970 or before is what I'm thinking. But but it just illustrates the point when we're talking about methods of communication and exchanging information. These people have been light years ahead of us for decades.
Yeah.
So,
Because why I think this is important is, okay, so time kind of reveals a lot of things, and it's been 17 years, almost 17 years since he passed away, but he was doing stuff for like at least a quarter of a century or longer, doing the stuff that we're doing. And so about 8 to 10 good years of him reaching out to the public and trying to educate and get people to see what the government's actually doing, or people behind the government are actually trying to set up. And so what are we here to do? Are we doing the continuation of it? I feel like it is. So, like some of the truth tellers, especially the main ones, Jimmy Dore, Elite Camp, they're trying to get people off mainstream media because mainstream media is lying, and get them to independent media. And a lot of the smaller ones are trying to kind of still kind of go that route of, all right, this is what the mainstream media is saying, this is what's actually going on, this is the hypocrisy that certain people in politics, in the 1%, the billionaire classes, or mainstream media are saying and doing, or even Hollywood, and Hollywood is mentioned. And then there's people like us, is we want to do something, trying to find some activism, but all we really have is our research, because we don't really have a following. We just kind of follow each other. We're a group of people who talk with each other, share notes. Sometimes it gets too heavy, sometimes it gets too deep, sometimes it gets too crazy. And I'm probably the crazy one in our group, and that's fine. I'll let
you take that.
Yeah. But
see, that's the thing, man. I've got all kinds of friends who have all kinds of crazy beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't hold it against people when they believe some of like the crazier thing, or the things that I think are crazier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when you're talking about beliefs, it's like, I don't believe anything. One thing, what I find is to a conclusion, if logical or illogical, but at least I try to follow my logical senses, is that the people behind the everything, or at least higher up in our government and power, they do have odd belief systems that doesn't correspond correctly to what they say in public is their religion. I mean,
some of the groups have strange belief systems.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
and
some of them are like what we would consider maybe Luciferian.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you consider, like when you look at the history of the Vatican Bank and some of these other groups, I mean, they revel in blasphemy for some reason. You see them do it, like there's videotapes of them, having gay orgies and then the next morning conducting mass.
Yeah.
As it is a way to snub their nose at God.
Yeah.
And so they have these weird beliefs. So it's not completely off the wall that they would do some of the really crazy things, like sacrifice people to whatever, and all this other crap. It's completely possible. They used to do it in the past.
You've seen videos of them having gay orgies?
Not the gay orgy part.
Well, Garden participated.
Yeah, I filmed it.
Go ahead.
But they didn't show the gay orgy part.
I was going, where the hell have I been?
What happened was, like, these priests, like, they owned a bathhouse, like, somewhere in Vatican City, right? And they would, like, for years and years, they would just go there and have these gay orgies. And part of the reason, who was it, Benedict? I think it was Benedict who stepped down, right? Ratzenberg, the emperor-looking guy. Part of the reason he stepped down was because of that scandal, and there was video evidence of them doing all kinds of crazy shit. So.
Oh, holy shit! I didn't know that.
All in a day's work for TYT.
That's
right. So I think that's a lot of. I don't want to get too long into it, and we could talk about anything in Ryan's channel if he's still going.
Well, just to clarify a point I'm reading about it, ARPANET came out like it, according to standard sources, like in the late 70s, early 1980s. ARPA itself was founded in 1958. They began working on intelligence or information technology, directed weapons technology, directed energy weapons technology, and all this stuff around the time that I was referring to, like around the mid 60s and early 70s. So,
all right. So I'm gonna
Ryan's not on either.
Yeah, I know. I just noticed. I'll see if he's gonna start streaming. Ryan, if you're listening, if you're gonna stream. If not, I'll start a anything goes open topic.
Does it mean we have to stop talking about this?
No, if you want to keep talking about it, you can keep talking about it in the open topic. I just don't want to force people to talk about a topic if they don't want to talk about it, type of thing.
This is like, I listened to the whole thing, by the way.
Oh, good. Thanks.
And while I was just getting my room all finished, I was just like,
I mean, I just don't want anyone to force anyone to watch 50 more hours of Bill Cooper without kind of understanding why I'm
you're not going to stop doing this, right?
Nope, I'm doing it till I go through everything. And what I'm hoping to find are the people who listened to him back in the 90s and the early 2000s until he passed away, and what happened in the aftermath after he died. Did something keep going? Is the militia still in existence? Did it go away? Did it disband? Did it turn into something else? Did it get co-opted? You know, what happened the 17 years after his death? Where are they now? Are they doing YouTube streams?
This type of shit excites me. Do you see all the goosebumps?
Well, we can't see it from here. And so it's just a lot of questions as to like what happened, because what's going to happen to us in 8, 10, 17, 25 years?
I don't think we're going to.
Well, yeah. And if one of us gets assassinated, if I'm in the middle of nowhere in Nebraska and you guys hear in Columbus that some crazy Asian yelled at a couple of disguised cops who were teens on a pickup truck and got into a shootout, that it wasn't instigated by me. I'm not suicidal. I'm not crazy. I'm not going to go up to a group of teens with, tell them to shoo by waving a gun. So, okay, Ryan Stacy's not.
Well, I think it would be Kim Jong-un. He's trimming the family tree to eliminate competition.
All right, so people who are, you guys are on, you guys can stay on. I'm going to switch it to open topic, anything goes. Ryan's not going to stream afterwards. People who are on YouTube, it's going to shut off a little bit, or on Periscope, but it will be back on. We'll just have an open topic rather than keeping on topic with Bill Cooper, about Bill Cooper. Okay, so give me a moment, and I'm going to stop the video just to set up.
Are we broadcasting?